The first time Cole ever stayed over at my place, it was because his radiator broke, not because of anything romantic, and I want to say that up front, because everything that happened after only makes sense if you know how boring the beginning actually was. It was late January, the kind of cold that gets into your teeth, and Cole texted me at 10 at night saying his landlord wasn't answering and his apartment had dropped to somewhere in the 50s, and could he crash on my couch. I said obviously, come over, and he showed up 20 minutes later in sweatpants and a coat thrown over a t-shirt, holding a pillow like a kid who'd never been away from home before, which was funny because Cole was the least soft, least sentimental guy I knew. Captain of his intramural hockey team, the kind of guy who high-fived strangers at bars, not the kind of guy who shows up at your door hugging a pillow to his chest like it's a life raft. My whole apartment sounds like a freezer, he said, dropping onto my couch. I could see my breath in my kitchen. I'm not exaggerating. You're always exaggerating. Okay, fine, slightly, but it was cold, Eli, genuinely cold. We'd been friends since freshman year of college, 6 years by that point, the kind of friendship that had survived roommates moving out, breakups, one memorably bad road trip to a wedding neither of us particularly wanted to attend. He'd dated 3 different women in that time, seriously enough to introduce them to me, and I'd sat through enough of those introductions smiling politely while some private, tired part of me went again, okay, another one. I liked him. I'd liked him for longer than I was proud of admitting, quietly, without any real plan of doing something about it, because Cole was about as likely to reciprocate that as my radiator was to fix itself. That night, the cooch situation got complicated fast, because my cooch was this second-hand thing I'd bought off someone moving out of the building, and it turned out, we discovered this at around midnight, after he'd tried to fall asleep on it for 20 minutes, that one of the cushions had a broken spring that stabbed you directly in the lower back if you lay a certain way. This thing is trying to kill me, he said, sitting up, rubbing his back. I think I found the spring with my kidney. Just take the bed, I'll take the cooch. No, dude, it's your apartment. It's also my cooch, and I already know it's evil, you don't. We went back and forth on this for an embarrassingly long time, the kind of polite argument that happens between 2 people who genuinely don't want to inconvenience each other, and it ended, as these things sometimes do, with neither of us winning, and both of us just lying down in my bed, on opposite sides, fully clothed, like 2 kids at a sleepover pretending this was a completely normal, uncomplicated thing to do. It was not, for me, uncomplicated. I want to be honest about that. I lay there in the dark, very aware of every inch between us, aware of his breathing, aware of the specific, unfamiliar experience of Cole Whitfield being 3 feet away from me in a bed, and I remember thinking, this is fine, this is a completely normal thing best friends do, several times, like repeating it enough would make it true. You awake? He asked, maybe 20 minutes in. Yeah. This is weird, right? Tell me this is weird. I laughed, relieved that he'd said it first. It's a little weird. Okay, good, I thought it was just me. He shifted onto his side, facing me, and in the dim orange light coming through my blinds from the street lamp outside, I could make out the shape of him, not details, just an outline, the same as most nights I'd spent quietly wanting him and getting nothing but outlines. I haven't shared a bed with a guy since like middle school sleepovers. I feel like this is different than middle school sleepovers. Why? I didn't have a good answer that didn't reveal too much, so I just said, I don't know, we're adults, it's just different, and let it drop there. And he didn't push, and eventually his breathing evened out into sleep, and I lay awake another hour just listening to it, feeling stupid and fond and a little sad all at once. That could have been the whole story, one cold night, one favor, nothing more, except his radiator took almost 2 weeks to get fixed, because his landlord was useless and the part had to be ordered. And so for those 2 weeks, 4 or 5 nights out of 7, Cole ended up back at my place, and we developed this unspoken routine of just sharing the bed, no discussion required anymore, like our bodies had decided something our conversations hadn't caught up to. Somewhere around night 4, we ended up closer than we had been that first night. I don't know exactly how it happened, probably just the natural drift of 2 people sleeping in the same space, gravity doing what gravity does, but I woke up around 3 a.m. with his arms slung over me, his face close enough that I could feel him breathing against the back of my neck, and I lay there completely still, terrified that moving even an inch would wake him and force us both to acknowledge it, and equally terrified that I never wanted it to end. He woke up before I did that time, and I felt him go still too, the way you do when your body clocks something before your brain fully catches up. And then, very carefully, he moved his arm back to his own side of the bed, and neither of us said anything about it in the morning. We just drank coffee like normal, and he made fun of my cereal choices like normal, and left for work like normal, and I spent the whole day turning that stillness over in my head, trying to figure out if it had meant anything or if I was, as usual, building a whole story out of a half second. It happened again 2 nights later. Not identical, this time it was me who drifted, apparently, because I woke up with my head near his shoulder, one hand loosely holding a fistful of his shirt like I'd grabbed onto him in my sleep, without permission from my waking self. I pulled back fast, mortified, sure I'd ruined something, but he was already awake, watching me in the grey early light, not saying anything, just watching, and there was something in his face I couldn't place, not disgust, not amusement, something more careful than either of those. "Sorry," I said, "I don't know what my hands were doing." "It's fine," he said, quieter than usual. "I didn't mind." That sentence sat in the room a long time after he said it. I didn't mind. Such a small phrase, but it detonated something in me, because Cole was not a guy who chose his words carefully, generally. He said whatever came to him, loud, unfiltered, and this instead had come out slow, considered, like he'd thought about it before he let himself say it. "You didn't mind," I repeated, testing the words in my own mouth. "No," he looked away, toward the window, and I watched something flicker across his jaw, some tension he was working through in real time. "Can I tell you something and you not make it weird? I feel like whatever you're about to say is already going to be weird, but go ahead." He laughed, short, nervous, nothing like his usual big laugh. "I've been sleeping better here than I have in months, like objectively, and I keep telling myself it's because your bed's more comfortable than mine, which it's not, your mattress is kind of lumpy actually." "It's rude." "But I don't think that's actually why." He was quiet a second, still looking at the window instead of me. "I think it's because of you, being there, and I don't really know what to do with that information, because it doesn't fit anywhere in how I think about myself." My heart had started doing something loud and unreasonable. "What do you mean, it doesn't fit?" "I mean I've dated Sarah, Priya, Jess. You've met all of them. You know I like women. That's never been a question for me. But this feels like a different kind of thing than a question. It feels like something that was already true before I noticed it, and I only noticed it because you're right here and I can't pretend I'm not noticing it anymore." I didn't say anything for a second, partly because I was scared of scaring him off the sentence before he finished it, and partly because I genuinely didn't trust my own voice not to crack. "I don't know what that makes me," he said, finally looking at me again. "I don't know if that makes me anything, or if it's just about you specifically, or what. I've never let myself think about it because it never seemed like a real possibility before. But it's 3 in the morning and you're an inch away from me, and I don't want to lie about how not bothered I am by that." "Cole, you don't have to say anything back," he said quickly, like he was already regretting how much he'd handed over. "I just needed to say it out loud once, so it existed somewhere outside my own head." I reached over, slow, giving him plenty of time to pull away if he wanted to, and put my hand against his jaw, and he didn't pull away. He leaned into it, just slightly, just enough that I understood he meant every word. "I've liked you for 4 years, I said. "I never told you because it felt like the kind of thing that would end us, and I didn't want to lose you over something you couldn't return." 4 years, his eyebrows went up. "Eli, we've been sharing a bed for less than 2 weeks, and you're telling me this has been going on for 4 years. I told you it would be weird." "It's not weird, it's..." He stopped, laughed, ran a hand over his face. "It's a lot actually, I feel like an idiot. 4 years and I never noticed." "You weren't supposed to notice, that was the whole plan." "Terrible plan." "In hindsight, yeah." We laid there a while, not saying anything, just looking at each other in that pale early light, and it felt like something had cracked open between us that neither of us knew how to close back up, nor wanted to. "I'm scared," he admitted after a while. "Not of you. I don't know, of what this means, of what I tell people, of whether this is a real thing or just some late-night confession that evaporates the second the sun's fully up." "It's morning," I said. "The sun's basically up." He looked toward the window, where the grey had started shifting into something warmer, and then back at me, like he was checking whether the feeling had survived daylight. "Yeah," he said, slow, almost surprised. "Yeah, it's still here." His radiator got fixed 3 days later, and I remember genuinely dreading the text that told me his landlord had finally sent someone, because some small, needy part of me had gotten used to him being there every night, had built a routine out of a temporary situation, and didn't want it to be temporary anymore. "I guess I don't need to crash here anymore," he said, standing in my doorway with his bag, the night the radiator got fixed, both of us aware of exactly what he was actually asking. "You don't need to," I said, "but you can, if you want." He was quiet a second, and I watched him decide something, the same careful, considered look he'd had that morning he told me he didn't mind. I want to, he said. I think I've wanted to for longer than I let myself admit. I just needed a broken radiator to make it socially acceptable to figure that out. That's the least romantic origin story I've ever heard. I know, I'm sorry. Next time I'll arrange for something with better ambience. There's going to be a next time. I hope so, he said, and there was something in his voice, some unguarded hope that didn't match the confident, loud version of him I'd known for 6 years. And I understood in that moment that whatever this was, it had cracked him open in a way he hadn't expected either, and that we were both, in our own clumsy ways, standing at the start of something neither of us had a map for. We didn't have some clean, tidy conversation that fixed everything after that. He spent weeks working through what it meant that he could want a man specifically, could want me specifically, without it erasing anything he'd felt before. There were nights he got quiet and distant, working through some private confusion he didn't always share, and nights he showed up at my door for no reason at all except that he wanted to be near me, radiator fully functional, no excuse required anymore. It's been 8 months. He still doesn't love labels, still gets a little tense when someone assumes things about him too quickly, and I've learned to give him room for that instead of needing him to resolve it faster than he's able to. But most nights he still ends up in my bed, not because anything's broken anymore, just because it's where he wants to be, and every so often, usually late, when neither of us can sleep, he'll say something like, "Do you ever think about how none of this happens if my radiator doesn't break?" And I'll say something like, "Every single day," and he'll laugh that same big unguarded laugh, and pull me closer, like the 4 years I spent quietly loving him from a careful distance, were just the long, patient setup for one broken heater in the middle of January. I think about that a lot, actually, how the biggest thing that ever happened to me arrived disguised as something completely unremarkable, a busted radiator, a lumpy mattress, an ordinary favor between two friends who didn't know yet what they were actually building. Sometimes the most enormous things don't announce themselves. They just show up cold, holding a pillow, asking if they can stay the night.